I've noticed a pattern over the years. Whenever Windows, or Microsoft more specifically, decides to be miserly and penny pinching and monopolistic, people realize that they have to do something because they're going to possibly lose their operating system. I always direct my attention towards Linux, and I've done this for a long time. I remember back in 07 I got Puppy Linux, which was one of the first that I ever tried to use and got into. I was looking for the safest Linux because, even back then, people were worried that the only real, way to protect yourself was to have 3 different virus protection programs going and always have an updated Windows operating system and just all the things you can do to protect. Back then, people were hearing about Trojan horses and, malware wasn't really a thing then, but eventually malware and bloatware and just whatever kind of ware started happening. So I would make disks of Puppy Linux or whatever, and I've used lots of different ones since then. I've used Debian and Ubuntu and just lots and lots of other ones, but Puppy Linux was always my favorite because it was the first that I used, and it was different than the rest. The way Puppy's different is you boot it with a disk, or in today's world you have USB flash drives and stuff, so you can boot it with a flash drive, and then the operating system loads itself into RAM, and then it only runs in RAM until you save it somewhere else. And once you close down Puppy Linux, it offers you the chance to create a save file, and everything's stored in that save file, and then so it's kind of compacted in one little unit called an SFS file, and you can encrypt those. So we were just, back then it was like, wow, it's neat. And Puppy Linux and Linux in general, which we should all be calling Linux, because the guy that invented it was named Linus, and he named it after himself. But I'm pretty sure it's kind of a running joke that everyone that worked around him called it Linux as well. So we're all calling it Linux, like Annie Lennox, right, from Eurythmics or something, when it's supposed to be pronounced Linux. And people say, I don't care because I'll call it whatever I want, that's easier to say, whatever. The guy who invented its name is Linus, and he named it after himself, and he called it Linux, and we're supposed to call it Linux, but that's not here or there. I'll be referring to it as Linux because that's what it's called now. It proves that Windows is more than just icons and a pretty picture, or folders and a GUI, a graphical user interface. The first time I ever heard that called GUI, I was just like, oh god, that's stupid. I always called it a GUI. Then someone said, oh, it's a GUI. Like, oh, it's a GUI. It's backdoors. Windows is nothing but endless backdoors to data. They were the original network terminal competing with only a very small number comparatively, and still a very small number of internet access protocol provider terminals. So we had the file allocation tables were all being changed to allow for more data to be transferred at one time, and we started with FAT tables, FAT16, FAT32, and so on. Eventually network terminal file systems, and so other systems were being made alongside that could move large and store and move large amounts of data. And so Linux ended up being something that helped to show that more could be done faster with less and be safer, arguably safer. What's the problem with Linux? Well, the problem most people have with Windows is that it's constantly bothering them with updates all the time. And, you comically are about to do something important and you start up your system and you get a blue screen saying updates will finish in whenever we decide to finish them, and then an hour and a half later you're finally on your system, and then you try to get stuff done and it says, oh, sorry, you need to do something, update or download this or that or the other to use what you've been using the whole time, and it's just a big annoying mess. And with the last Windows 10 service security update ending at the beginning of October, the middle of October, I decided to go ahead and get back into Linux again. And I had a distro that I downloaded a while ago that I put on a disk, and I was going to use it on different systems for lots of reasons, just for fun. And I broke it out, and it's called Fossapup 64. It runs off a disk. It's 64-bit OS for my 64-bit laptop. Just like all the other puppy distros, it's really compact. It runs really, really fast. It's one of the fastest operating systems I've ever seen. And that's what you're looking at right now. This is Puppy Linux. Now, they come with endless programs off the disk. Pretty much an answer for anything. There are certain things that are harder to deal with, and Linux is not modular like Windows. Linux is more windowless interaction, or like terminal, what we would think of in Windows world as a DOS window or a command window, what's called a terminal. And so a lot of the interactions, you have to have at least a basic understanding of how things work. And it doesn't help that there are lots of offshoots of Linux, and they all have their own way of dealing with things. So with Puppy, they have something called pet packages, or SFS files. The Puppy pet packages will just install something to your system. And they come with a loader, and then anything you need can be installed. So the problem with Linux is that rather than having to get massive updates constantly, you have to carefully monitor and update software as it becomes obsolete. So, if you've noticed, Windows isn't the only thing that updates. Your Google Chrome is updating constantly. Your Firefox is updating constantly. Your programs are updating constantly. And it's really annoying. Well, part of the security in those updates can be wider in its protective net with the more modular Windows security updates than with Linux, where you might find yourself using something obsolete, but at the same time you can take protective measures. So they're both very powerful, they're both very usable, and today Linux is much, much more powerful than it ever was before. There is a distro called Pop now that is just basically, here you go, have Linux, have Steam, play games, and it doesn't matter what system the games are for. And it's just running them very well, and it has a very high compatibility rate, and it's totally free. Works great on your systems. So if you're still using a laptop, still using a high-end gaming PC instead of some console, then you can get a free OS and just put it on your system, and then there you have Linux and Steam and all of your games, and they're gonna run better because Linux is taking up less resources than Windows. And so for all of the crap Windows is bloating the system with, it's slowing it down and slugging it down so everything sucks and nothing runs fast, Linux is running it as fast as it can possibly run. So now for a long time, people who wanted to run Windows programs in Linux had to use a compatibility layer or an emulator. An emulator, something like DOSBox, that emulates DOS. A compatibility layer like Wine, which is something that will run Windows programs for the most part, and but it's hit or miss. It's really hit or miss whether it will run things. And, you know, it's really better in today's world to be more selective and try to use native software with Linux, because the compatibility and the performance is always going to be better. So I'm going to talk today about Visual Batari Basic, Batari Basic's latest distro, which seems to be outside of that Visual Batari Basic world, how to handle Stella, how to use Linux to program your Atari games, and just the whole mess of dealing with it in case my work system or any of my other computers are, for whatever reason, I don't have access, I still can use Linux and get my work done. But I'm also going to show off some other things about FossilPup 64 and also just in Linux in general, because I'll be using this system for internet and also possibly for some coding, which is something I don't usually do. So that's next. Okay, so to get this work done, if I'm in Linux and I've chosen this to work on, well, there's lots of ways to do this. Okay, I'm sure just like with BB and DOS or any other way to program, there are newer, different, possibly better ways to do this. This is the simplest way without getting into too much downloading or any other stuff. This is using Stella, and I'm using the version through Wine because it runs better on this system for whatever reason. I'm using the terminal in Linux to compile, and I'm using Geany, G-E-A-N-Y, which is their text editor. That's your default text editor in this distro. It could be so many different things depending on what Linux you're using. But I want to show something right away. This is my code, which you've probably seen. And let's see here. As you can probably tell, it's a little different. Now, one of the big reasons Visual Batari Basic is helpful is it highlights things with a color code, and you can see if that color code has applied itself to important things. So you'll notice that your bank is red, your ones and zeros for your sprites will be red, your data for your play fields will be red, and so you can help to separate things. But then in this Geany text editor, if I don't close my file, which in this case is NWA base, is just a code word for the wrestling game, if I don't close this, then the next time I open Geany, it will still be there. So I don't even have to look for it. I can just open Geany and the last thing I worked on will be right there. Just that easy. Also, it color codes everything that it considers to be a code related keyword, because you're meant to be able to just type code like configuration files or whatever, any kind of code, right through this, and then you're ready to use it in Linux. So if you know how to code things, you can just use this to edit or create code very easily, very quickly. So it already is meant to be a editor, not just a notepad, and it works fine. But also it has lines on the side. So you have that additional reference where part of the convenience of labels in coding with Visual and with Batari Basic, you don't need lines like the old world of Basic where everything was actually numbered lines. So this helps though, because I can remember by line where something is in code. So suppose I'm doing work down here in my fourth bank here, where I've got my words. I can see here that all of this starts in 2688, 2688 is where bank 4 is. So I could write that down or something and have a quick, easy reference to what line by number anything is. So that's even more precise than just isolating a bank. Okay, which you can do. That's easy too. Because the bank has a divide between the actual identifier and code usage. So I know if I put a space, if I'm typing find bank 4, it's going to go straight there. If I just type bank 4 with the 4 right next to the K, it's going to systematically find every time something calls out to bank 4 for a go sub or for a go to. But you can still use search to just find bank 4. That would be the equivalent of the identify this bank function in Visual Batari Basic. There are actually a couple of advantages to using this cheaper, simpler method. And I'll get into those a little bit. First off, having everything numbered and colored and everything does help. And it's cool. Easy changing font sizes, stuff like that. I noticed the font sizes are a little derelict in Visual Batari Basic. It starts you out with a different font than what it lists, and then when you save it, well, a lot of fonts are incompatible because the spaces and the sizes are different. So you'll end up with the uniformity of the sprites missing. In this particular case, that uniformity is there. So as you can see, it's not red, it's green, but you can see where everything's spaced out properly. So if you're using a font where 0 and 1 aren't spaced out the same, then each of those rows will be a different width and your sprite will look like crap. And Visual Batari Basic will give you access to the myriad of fonts that are available within Windows to use, but only a few of them, like Console, Consolas, things like that. There are certain ones where Impact probably is one, where things will be lined up properly in a convenient way. You can actually visualize what you're looking at. So if I look at my playfields, for instance, I can very easily visualize this playfield. Just like with Batari. It's got end highlighted, so I know this is important. If and then are both highlighted. All numbers are highlighted. It's very useful. So, I'm in my code. I've got my code here. Now, I want to compile my code. I'm in my terminal. To install this, you're not going to use, obviously, install win or whatever the command is within Batari Basic. You're going to use the Linux install command. Okay, I'll show that in a minute. And the actual command is different. Okay, so to find where I want to go to do this work, I'll just look here, root, work, Atari, and WA. So I'll say cd work. I think this should take me there. It might not, but we'll see. Yeah, okay, it's no director. I need to check and see where I am to begin with. There we go. And Linux is case sensitive. Okay, so if you are used to just typing willy-nilly Windows, it's not going to work. So here we are. I'm going to say 2600, is it basic? SH? I don't know, I'm trying to remember. NWA base. There we go. It is compiling. Now, in Visual Batari Basic, when I run this, I have to space out each of the windows so that I get the largest view of my code. The different files you might be working with are on the right side, and those can take up a lot of space. And then when you get your information from compiling, you're often not able to see everything that easily. So this is very easy to see, and you can leave it open while you're working. So you don't have to move or contort spacing to be able to see all of that. If you scroll up in Visual Batari Basic, drag up the bottom to be able to see all of that data there, then it's taking up a large amount of space at the bottom of your screen just to show that. But this is there ready for me to see all the banks. It tells me relocate BP is skipped because it's not a DVC plus file. That's fine though. And it's there all the time for me to view. I can very easily at any time just click that and go, oh, okay, I have this much left in this bank. I have this much left in this bank. That's easier than in Visual, where I'd have to resize things to be able to see all that information easily, or take up too much of the space where I'm editing. Okay, so I've compiled it, and I know that it's good because it said it was successful. Now what I just showed here is Batari Basic version 1.9 2025. So this is the one I was having a problem with in Windows, and it works totally fine in Linux. So I could start programming a DPC Plus or a ELF Pixie kernel project because of this. So here in Linux I'm safe to try to do that PXE kernel and work with it. Now, I know I just compiled the game, so over here is Stella, and I'll go ahead and just open that up real quick, and I'll double click my NW. Here we go. Now this is my game, and I'll go ahead and go full screen. I hope that works okay. See, even though this is Wine is not an emulator. Okay, so I think there might be some confusion about whether it performs well enough to use, but it's actually a compatibility layer. So it has the files and the libraries, and it can either use its own form of those files and libraries or the actual ones. And it's a mess. It's like varying degrees of compatibility with them. Linux is not Windows, but if you have the libraries that the files need to run, and there's nothing, other than the system itself to get in the way, then for the most part they'll run. You won't get great performance out of a lot of stuff through Wine unless you have a really good graphics card and really good dedicated drivers. I mean, this is an Intel 405 GPU. It's one of those ones that's like on the chip and has adjustable RAM and things. It's not a gaming computer. So let's cycle through some of these characters here, and since I've changed the color, I need to run through and check on some things to make sure everybody's going to look the way they're supposed to. I'm going to start the process here of all right. Really happy with how this is turning out. I think the screen looks great. The emulation is really good. This is a filter, so it looks, considerably better than what it would look like on a television, but it is imitating some, scan line kind of look and a little bit of sharpness, interpolation, stuff like that. So just to show, this does work fine. So that's ready to test. I can test on here. I can leave this there and just kind of shrink it down. And I've got my editor here. So, you know, for all intents and purposes, this could be where I program my game. I usually don't, obviously bad. So here on Linux, though, this is through my TV, as you can see. So I have HDMI, which means the drivers are supporting HDMI out. But let's look at something else that can be done here. I've got my terminal open. Native distros have been made, or not native distro, native video games have been, you know, packed and hacked to a degree. They're native games for Linux now, where they'll take a game that maybe had a Linux version or didn't, and then prepare it for Linux to run natively. They're not with a Wine compatibility layer, not with Steam or anything. Sometimes they'll use a Steam emulator. Sometimes they'll use GOG, something like that. Just like the games that are Linux. So if you have a good enough Linux system, which I don't, then you could play a lot of games today that have been prepared for that. And it's not great as people start to drift away from Windows monopolistic tactics. So a couple things with this distro that I really liked is this program here. At first I hated it, but then I realized you had complete power to edit the entire thing. If you notice the report at the bottom right here, that's actually the weather report, and they drew everything out with text, like ASCII symbols. Like it'll have little clouds drawn with lines and parentheses and brackets and commas and stuff, and it updates the weather as it's online. It also monitors everything that's happening. So any file that's doing anything, it's telling you what it's doing, how much of the CPU. Essentially, it's task manager, the information you would go into your task manager to find out. It's showing at least some of it right there on the side. So to deal with things like that. Now Bluetooth is on here, and they have the ability to pair Bluetooth items with Linux. So I thought, okay, what about my Xbox One controller? And this was something I thought was really neat, and it does put Linux slightly ahead of Microsoft in this area, is that you can pair your Xbox One controller to your Linux Bluetooth, and not just use it with only Microsoft certified things, but as a legitimate joystick. And actually it defaults to use the left analog stick as the system mouse. So once it's paired, unless you write a small program, which I already did, to tell it not to do that, it will be the mouse and the mouse buttons for you the second the controller pairs. Also, when I pair this controller with Windows, it always takes a couple of seconds. Like, you know, your controller will flash. I'll show you how fast this pairs with Linux. It's paired. 2 blinks, and now this controller's paired, and it doesn't just work with whatever Microsoft wants this joystick to work with. It works with everything, and I think that's extremely useful. A download of a game that I wanted to play that's on here. I've got Vice City in 3. I'm going to go ahead and start up Vice City. As I'm thinking about it, I want to be careful with this, because I don't want to get whatever, you know, copyright strikes or something like that because of whatever music might play on this. But I'm going to start it up. Okay. Now, probably noticed how fast that started. I think I have a save here. Now, of course, this is an old game, And who cares if my laptop will run this, but just look at how perfect this is. It is about as fast and as perfect as it can possibly be. It really is running. I'm not going to trigger the mission just yet. I'm going to go ahead and go out here and just run around. Now, I never got into Vice City that much. I played 3 a whole bunch back in the day. I've pretty much played all of them except for Vice City. So, I thought this was a pretty cool looking way to play this. I don't know, that's punch. Let's see if he's strafing. I don't know how to jump. Don't know if he can jump. Oh, that just made him stop instantly. Wow. So I might need to, you know, calibrate controls and stuff to get things to happen. But as you can see, this is running really fast. I think it has some, I don't know, maybe possibly better looking stuff. I think that 3 had some upgraded textures and things like that. Within a couple of seconds of somebody's music. Now, there we go. Now I've noticed that, you know, Linux is not 100% perfect all the time. You know, neither is Windows. You'll get all kinds of problems happening. I don't know if this is going to crash or what. I've noticed that it's really playing well though. Like, it's super, super smooth. I mean, as it probably should be. But this isn't the best laptop. It's a Pentium. I think it's got 4 cores, 4 threads, a 405 graphics chip. This is definitely not a gaming system. It's about 1 step above a Celeron. It's about the worst you can get. Plane way up ahead. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know where the brakes are. I definitely need to adjust my controller settings because I don't think I've got brakes. Okay. But no, the way it was set up, the mouse was the left stick, and so it was messing with the controls in the video games, which was obviously the main thing I wanted this joystick for, was to play video games on here. And maybe test out a game with a joystick if I choose to. But it is just rippingly fast. This is, once I get the controls perfect, this is definitely a playable experience for this game. Okay. Okay, and that was just a download. I downloaded it and it immediately worked. No problem. Just put it in a folder. Now, that is not the case with a lot of downloads. I got some downloads and they were looking for graphical 32-bit graphics layers that wouldn't work with this. They wouldn't install properly, and you're going to find more instances of that with these more like conservative distros than things that are made for gaming. This system isn't really made for gaming. It's just something you can kind of throw at it and hope that it sticks. But another thing that works great is DOSBox. So if I go up here and just open my DOSBox emulator, okay, and of course you can set the computer against itself. Now this is like, I think, the first version. This isn't the 256 color version. And you know, some of my fond memories of this game were when we'd go to Radio Shack back when they were in the mall, and they'd always have computers, and they'd have this as the screensaver. So the computer would be running usually the higher color version of this game. What a great video game. I don't know if the sound is working right on it. I think it might be, but I know that there's more sound in the later version. They have a ton of emulators for Linux, so you can use emulation for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, basically everything, MAME, you know, whatever you want to emulate. Amiga, and Amiga has a higher color version of this with better sound. This is basically the just one step above the Nintendo version of the game, which is a low color, low resolution version. Looks like we're castling early in the game. I wouldn't be surprised if the next move on the black side is oh, okay, they moved, they went ahead and took out the knight with the bishop, which is good. No, I don't think the sound's working right in this. And that could be poor PC speaker emulation, because this is probably emulating the PC speaker for this. Okay, so just that's a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and quit. It won't let you quit until it's done with its animation segment there. There we go. Okay, so, okay. And I own Doom 95, so and Doom 2. It's coming through my laptop. And of course this is running stupid fast, like as fast as you'd want it to run. Maybe not as fast as on my Pentium 2, but definitely fast enough to play it. So let's... I think I may have set my sound up to have too many sounds at once. Perfect gameplay, like super fast and clean and smooth. But, you know, when you've been into Doom for as long as I have, you can't imagine not having infighting. Like, you can actually set up whole battles if you're careful. And when they started making sacrifices for Super Nintendo version or console versions of this game, they got rid of infighting in some of them. And I think that that really was terrible, because it's one of the most unique, coolest things about this game is the ability to infight, to spark infighting. I've also got, I just remembered, when I play Doom, I like to turn the music way up and turn the sound effects way down. Just because I really love the music. Like, I care more about the music than the sound effects in a game like this. Oh. I got it anyway. Yeah, if you hit the button before it's down all the way, it will still open the wall. Actually, really hope this isn't probably going to get me a copyright strike. I don't know, because it's the Doom music. Let's see. There we go. 88 of the items. Obviously, this is Bomberman, but Hudson, for whatever reason, probably couldn't call it Bomberman on the PC, maybe, at the time, so they called it Dynablaster. Okay. That was quick. Now, I won't say this is the best emulation ever, but it's a game you can play on here. The controls are a little whack. It feels like it's trying to be a digital pad with an analog stick, so it's not perfect. And that can be easily remedied. Because these have a keyboard enumerator built in now. Oh, great. They have a keyboard enumerator now where all you have to do is open the enumerator and you can immediately, oh God, you can immediately assign whatever keyboard keys to your gamepad. So, very, very easily you can play any DOS game, especially ones that don't even have joystick support. So that's a big advantage with this emulator. Is there are a lot of DOS games where they're picky about a joystick or they don't have joystick support, and being able to use your Xbox One or whatever controller, plug-in or Bluetooth, and then play those games, keyboard games. Cool. It's very cool. I don't know if that's a problem with how they coded the song or if that's the emulator freaking out, but this plays better slightly than on normal DOSBox, even though technically DOSBox X is for higher systems. Like the limit in DOSBox is a low-end Pentium, and the limit in this is a slightly better Pentium. The highest graphics card for DOSBox is like a Super VGA S3. The highest on this would probably be a Voodoo card, probably a first edition Voodoo card. So yeah, it plays great. This is good enough to play. And now you can speed up and slow down emulation. You can tell it to go as fast as it can. But my goal here eventually will be to put Windows 98 Second Edition on here, so I can play Voodoo games like maybe Gex Enter the Gecko or Tomb Raider. I don't know though, this might be only Voodoo 1 compatibility, whereas those I think will run with Voodoo 1 but are geared more towards the Voodoo 2 chips. What I had back in the day was I had a Voodoo 3500 with 16 megabytes of RAM. If you know anything about the era, that was a massive amount of graphics card RAM to have. So, and it came with Unreal. Like the box had I don't know, like a 7-foot long purple dongle cord cable with plugins, RCA in and out, S-Video in and out, and it came with video editing suites like ULEAD video editors. So you could pipe video into it or out. You could plug it into a TV. It had TV out native. And it played all of the Voodoo games better than any other card. So you had near 100% complete Voodoo game compatibility. Worked really, really great. And having that emulation is very helpful. So just DOSBox X though, that's out. Windows, Mac, Linux. It was kind of hard to find one that would work with FossaPup though, but I found one on a Russian website. So Linux is more approachable now than it ever was before, and Windows, I think, is going to feel the burn if they don't stop with their monopolistic BS, like with forcing people to have Windows 11 and then having this like compatibility designation where nothing will work with it unless it's new is bull crap, because there are people that are showing Windows 11 working on systems with 128 megs of RAM. There are people showing that it will work on almost anything. So what Microsoft is really doing is they're forcing you to buy new crap, and that's it. So they don't. In my processor, this processor is right at the very end, where it's like the processor that came out right after, literally the next processor up from the one I have in here, that this is a Pentium. The next one up is actually compatible with 11, and this one isn't. Then there's the security crap that you have to have, and a lot of systems don't have it. So they're isolating themselves by doing that. They're cutting off their customer base. They're manipulating and monopolizing by forcing people to buy new computers and new hardware to even have a working, updating operating system. And that's monopolistic practices. It should probably be illegal, just because their system can provably work on so many other. And if I want Windows 11, it's not that I can't have it. I just have to set my system up to not meet the basic requirements that they've detailed, even though it will still run, and then that means I can't upgrade Windows 10 to Windows 11, which would be free. it would just be another update. Instead, I have to purchase Windows 11. And then there are no guarantees because it's not on their list, their little compatibility list, even though that compatibility list isn't actually real. It's provably a lie because people are showing on purpose that Windows 11 will work on all these systems that they're saying it won't, or that they're saying that don't meet their compatibility needs for Windows 11. And really what they're trying to do is there's this security protocol that's on certain more modern motherboards, and I think it gives them like complete backdoor access to everything that's happening on your system. And so there's no way to keep their grubby fingers off of your system. And with that security protocol, that's their main thing. Now they just dropped it though. Within the past couple of weeks, they said, oh, well, you don't have to have the security protocol, but you still have to meet all the other criteria. And of course, the criteria they've laid out will automatically have that security protocol, or it's something that's made to have that installed onto it if it doesn't already have it. So they're basically still requiring it. They just don't have to say it because everything that they're detailing in their compatibility list will have already had it. So, oh, well, you don't need that security thing because that's not underhanded. All of the hardware that they require to have, though, will already have that security protocol on it. So they're just kind of acting like they're helping you when they're not. And Windows 11 runs like crap from what I've heard. It's full of problems. And what Windows has done systematically since around the XP service packs is tried to increasingly make their operating system more and more like a tablet or like a phone or like one of those popular devices that are encroaching on their dominance. And in doing that, they've made some of the hardest to use, confusing and incoherent, broken operating systems that you have to have or you can't do anything. So it's really messed up. It is. I mean, the constant, incessant updates suck. But not just that, the compatibility, the broken compatibility. So my last OS that I really liked because I could work with it was 7. And that was 7 Ultimate because you could actually turn off the majority of things that make Windows suck. You can get into the registry and turn things off. You can get into the services and turn things off, and then they won't turn back on. Home editions of these operating systems, there's no way to get into the registry and turn off stuff. There's no way to stop it. And so you have a system that's either constantly badgering you to update it all the time or trying to force you to hook it up to the internet. You know, a lot of these systems people use for work. And so once you get it to do what you need it to do for work, you don't want it to ever update after that because you don't want it to stop working. You don't want it to be manipulated. So if I have a video editing computer and I'm only putting videos on it to edit, and then what I produce with it is a finished product ready to go, have whatever done with it, it never needs to be online. And in my case, I'm using it for programming. The programming that I do has nothing to do with the internet, and it never needs to be online. So if I'm on a computer, like with this situation with Windows, which led me to go down this path here, and they say, oh, well, your computer doesn't have security updates anymore, and then they give me some, backstabbing blue screen, this isn't Windows 11, this system won't work anymore BS, then if I relied on that system for programming, I'm immediately shut down and incapable of doing what I'm trying to do. Now, I also use the internet to sell things on eBay. Like, okay, I sold so much on eBay last tax season that I had to file for self-employment because I made thousands of dollars selling stuff on eBay. And get on there and do my secure transactions because my system won't update and be secure, and I have to have that. So what they're doing is making an even more massive pile of obsolete garbage somewhere that no one can use. There goes my good old standard whatever, one upgraded 1.0, 1.1 Revenge upgrade is what I'm still going to use to program 32K or whatever bank switching or super chip games, because I know reliably it will not fail no matter what. But I'm also going to branch off and try the ELF driven PXE kernel because of how much more can be done with it. I'm going to try out my methods to see how it will look and what can be made. So it's an adventure. Adventures in Linux.